Thank you, Diana. I'm all mic'd up, I'm all wired up, I'm afraid I'm being hacked by somebody, so if my voice doesn't sound like mine, it's probably the Russians. You know, it's intimidating. You have a Toastmaster preceding me, you have the President Cycle, used to be a CNP member with me a long time ago, she's president, now I'm nobody. So clearly it's an intimidating environment, it's a good environment to give this talk. I'm glad to be here. Toronto is my second home. You know, my mother is 84, said she'd never heard me talk, so she came here early in the morning, and wheelchairs in your country starts at 5:30, so she was able to bring her here, so I thank you all. I thank you for inviting me. I wondered what I would talk about. I'm an oncologist. I spent most of my life taking care of cancer patients, but that's not the focus of what I want to talk about, because part of the program today is about mental health, well-being, so I thought I would talk about general things we do in order to identify cancer. And then I'll also talk about the mind, whether the mind has any role to play in cancer therapy or cancer recovery. And later on in the breakout session, we have Nashir Mulani, who will join me as a cancer survivor to talk about her journey as to what it means to be a cancer patient and to be able to survive in this particular environment, having lived with cancer. But before I do that, I want to show you a brief clip, video clip. Last Sunday, Nashir's daughter, myself, and a great group of physicians from the US had gone to Tajikistan. And we did the work that we're doing here, educating them about Jamaat, training them about cancer, in a place of the world which is so far away, but so dear to the heart of Imam. And I thought it would be useful to start. Probably the best part of my talk is the next 2 minutes. So I will show you a video of that event, and then we will talk about cancer. So let's go ahead. I think I control it here. There we are. Should work. We practiced hard on this one. This is as you fly down into Korok on a helicopter. This is Hazmam's helicopter. You get it only once in a while. If you don't get the helicopter, you take a jib for 16 hours, which is what we did on our way back. You can see little towns in the valley. And you can imagine 80% of Gorno-Badakhshan is mountains, only 20% is cities, and then you have small enclaves where the Jamaat lives. Cross-border market where Afghans come to trade with Tajiks at the Friendship Bridge. There was the Bahajima. We asked the man where he gets his spices from. He says, I get my internet from India. So here you are. This is the Panj River that separates Afghanistan from Tajikistan. You saw Hazmam open up the UCA campus in Kyrgyzstan, in Narin. This is the UCA campus in Korok, identical to the one in Narin. Being built in Korok. Once again, this is from Hazmam's room in the Serena, looking into Afghanistan. These are all family medicine doctors, Russian trained, all the students. We would talk in English, he would translate it into Tajik, taking an exam for us before our education. Hard work. All of them are family physician doctors, trained in Russia, trained by Russian entrepreneurs. So to go to a place which is so dear to the heart of Imam, where everybody is an Ismaili. We say the Chor in the Chokidara Ismaili in Korog when you go to Korog. And the difference is, when I work in healthcare, 99% of my patients are non-Ismailis. When you go to Korog for 2 weeks, everybody is Ismaili. It is clearly a different perspective of giving. So it's good to be here to be able to tell you a little bit about it and to tell you the same story we shared with our Jamaat in Tajikistan at that time. So when you land on a helicopter, you land there, and right opposite the hill, you see this welcome sign. It's a welcome sign that was put together by the Jamaat for Haz Imam during the Golden Jubilee. It says, welcome our Haz Imam, Golden Jubilee Mubarak. I'm sure it will change for Diamond Jubilee when he goes there a few years from now. This is a picture from Haz Imam's room at Serena, which is where he gave his first irshad to the Afghan Jamaat, where he looks across the river on the Punj River, and there we see the hill is Afghanistan. The Afghan Jamaat came all the way from the hills, many, many days of traveling to listen to the Imam. And this is him. For the first time ever, Afghan Jamaat gets to see the Imam of the time talking to them on the other side of the river. Yeah. And as Imam said, and I want to read to you because it's a sunny day today. I think it's an adequate quote of his irshad on that particular day. As Imam says in Irshad al-Raksha, he says the Quran refers very often to nature as a reflection of Allah's power of creation. It says, look at the mountains, look at the rivers, look at the trees, look at the flowers as evidence of Allah's love for the people whom He has created. Today, I look at this environment and I say to you, I believe Allah is smiling upon you. May His smile always be upon you. When you hear the words of the Imam like this, it is nothing but inspiring. So when you see the sun like this, I think it should be inspiring for you to take care of your health. And it's my responsibility to be able to share with you some of my knowledge so you can apply it to yourself. So usually what I do is I ask questions. And if you answer questions, you can move forward. If you don't answer the question, we get stuck. So it's because I have a limited amount of time, you have usually answer some questions. You can just raise your hand. If you don't answer the President Sahib's here, she's probably the most intelligent person. She'll answer on your behalf. So what is the most common cancer in America, or in Canada for that matter? What do you think will be the most common cause of death? Pardon? Lung? No, I'm not talking about cancer. I'm just talking about any disease. What is the most common disease? Heart disease, yeah? Perfect. Okay, so we got that right. Heart disease is number one. What is number three? I'll skip number two. What is number three? Stroke. Number three, stroke. Yeah. On the other hand, you know, heart disease, we don't worry about heart disease. We don't fear heart disease. You can have a bypass surgery, you have a stent placed. In fact, in my Jamaat Khan in Atlanta, if you don't have heart disease, you don't get a chair in Jamaat Khan. So it's a matter of pride. Muge char bypass se, you can say bypass se, to muge kursi milni. So, you know, it's clearly. So it is advantages. So heart disease is not something you're worried about. The third most common cause of death in North America is stroke. Stroke will take away your capacity to think, your capacity to move. You cannot talk. But we do not see patients with strokes in Jamaat Khan. They're at home, they're bedridden, so we don't seem to fear stroke because it's something out of mind, out of sight. But it's a very common condition. On the other hand, the second most common cause of death in North America is cancer. But everybody fears cancer. It doesn't matter who you are. You could be the kingpin of the world. If you have cancer, if you hear about cancer, you're concerned about it. And the reason is this. Cancer is a silent killer. Our feeling is it comes out of nowhere. Affects anyone and everyone, and there's nothing you can do about it. And that is the dogma about cancer. We worry about it, we fear it, we're afraid about it all the time. But all of these three aspects are partly true, but not the whole truth. One thing I learned when I came to America is when you go to the court, they ask you to raise your hand, put your left hand on the Bible, in our case the Quran, or the other way around. You'll say the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Well, this is the truth. It comes out of nowhere, affects everyone and anyone, and there's nothing you can do about it. Yes, it is partly the truth, but not the whole truth, and not nothing but the truth. And my job today is to convince you that there are other alternatives to be able to face cancer and not with fear. And where does this fear come from? It comes from the fear of unknown. It's hearsay. You heard it from somebody, you've never seen that patient, you imagine what cancer can do to you. And then use imagination. It kills you, chemotherapy is really bad, you lose your hair, your immune system is down, and you die. Well, chemotherapy is something worse than the disease when you hear about it. So it is the fear of the unknown. But there is also the fear of the known. The known is an example of what? You have one person, one loved one, one family member with cancer. Your whole aura about what cancer is dictated by that one experience. If the person did well, you think cancer is treatable. If the person did not do well, you think cancer is a death sentence. So even when we have knowledge, our knowledge is limited because it is n equal 1. And then we have half-truths. By the time you leave Jamaat Khana, the message you got from the Mukhi is probably changed completely by the time you come outside. Because it passes along, and everywhere you go, a word is changed, a comma is added, and a little bit of mitomirchi, as we say in Africa, East Africa, is added to it. So it is half-truths. So you have the fear of the unknown, but also the fear of the known, because we twist around the known and make one person become our main influence. So the only way to overcome fear is knowledge. And knowledge is important. The Imam has said, what is the source of knowledge? Certainly not necessarily the internet, and not Google all the time, and maybe Wikipedia for maybe 10%. The source of knowledge is always going to be very important. And the question is, do we get knowledge from the right source? It comes from education, it comes from awareness, it comes from experience. And that knowledge can help you at least overcome part of the fear that you have for cancer. And then the question is, and I see this all the time, knowledge is only useful if applied. Knowledge not applied is useless knowledge. So I see around me, and we have probably the average age is probably about 50. Those who are 50, for them, if they have cancer, it has probably started 3 or 4 years ago. You cannot prevent it anymore. You can only early detect it. If you're at the age of 30, you can probably prevent it. The best way to prevent cancer is just after puberty. So, my hope is that the information I give you will be taken to not only for yourself, but your children and your grandchildren. When you take your grandchildren out, and you have a hamburger and French fries and a calorie count of 1,000, not good for you, not good for your grandchild. When we do experiments in the laboratory, where you take a mouse, when you have the mouse be hyper-fed with high fat, and then when you give them a tumor cell to grow, that tumor will go very quickly in a fat mouse. That tumor will go very slowly in a thin mouse because of the metabolism, but also because fat engenders high insulin. Tumors have a receptor for insulin. Insulin is a growth factor for tumors. So anybody with a high insulin level is in a way feeding their tumor. So low fat, high fiber, exercise is no wife's tale. It's the reality. So if a grandfather has no exercise, takes fatty food and low fiber, the grandchild will be impacted. So I think all of us have a responsibility of educating our family. And part of it is knowledge, awareness, and getting the knowledge from the right source. So let me tell you about my presentation. I'll tell you about cancer, how we diagnose cancer, how do you take cancer early, and then finally we'll talk about the human mind. If the mind really has any influence. President Saleh talks about the human mind, what is going on in the human mind when you think, when you volunteer. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about that. We didn't practice this, but I think this was a good segue about the human mind and what it does when you think or when you don't think. So you have tumor. In the cell surface, you have tumor cells. They grow. The one phenomenon about tumor cells is that it will not grow flat. Most cells have what we call contact inhibition. When they touch each other, cells will stop growing. So your skin is very, very fine, very thin, very soft, because when cells meet each other, they stop growing, which is called contact inhibition. Cancer cells have no contact inhibition. They will keep on going on top of each other. So you see this, the blue cells going on top of each other. I don't have an arrow, but you can see that. The other thing is, cancer cells will invade. So there is this brown membrane that is invaded by cancer cells. So the second category for cancer is increased growth, invasion, which is right through any membrane that they are growing on. And thirdly, you can see these cancer cells go into the bloodstream right at the bottom. That's what we call metastasis. So cancer grows, invades, spreads to the bloodstream to cause metastasis. So when people die of cancer, they don't die of the primary tumor, not of breast cancer, not of lung cancer. You die because those cancer cells have spread into the bloodstream, have spread to other organs, into metastatic disease. So when you have a lesion from the breast that has spread to the bloodstream into your brain, you can get brain metastasis. And you might die of brain metastasis, but not of brain cancer. When breast cancer spreads to the liver, you may die of liver disease from breast cancer, but not of liver cancer. So I want you to understand that. And when we take a little biopsy in the liver lesion of a patient with breast cancer, those cells in the liver look identical to that person's cells in the breast. And that's how we know it was breast cancer from the breast, invaded into the membrane, into the bloodstream, and spread to the liver. So there you are. So you have normal breast cells, you have breast cancer cells that spread into the bloodstream. From there they can go to the lung to cause lung metastasis. They go to the liver, they go to the kidney or the bone. So all of a sudden, a lesion that was in the breast spreads all over the body. So you can tell for yourself. The only way to cure this disease is to pick it up early. Pick it up early before it has spread and become metastatic disease. We'll talk a little bit about it later.
Spread of tumors to distant locations is of great importance in cancer. About 50% of deaths due to cancer involve tumors that have spread around the body. The movement of tumor cells to other parts of the body is known as metastasis. Metastasis is a complex process during which cancer cells break off of the original or primary tumor and move through the body to form tumors at new locations. From the point of view of a cancer cell, this is a dangerous and often unsuccessful process. A trip through the body is full of hazards that cause the death of most cells that begin the journey, even tough cancer cells. To begin the process, individual cells must break away from the tumor and invade nearby vessels. The cells crawl along the surface of other cells and the fibrous, stringy structure surrounding them, and then force their way in. Shown here is the invasion of the blood supply. Once inside a blood vessel, the cancer cells may perish from a variety of causes. Some cells die simply because they are unable to survive floating around in the bloodstream. Others may become damaged and die when they squeeze through tight spaces or bump into the walls of the blood vessels. Still, other migrating cells may be recognized and destroyed by cells of the immune system. How and where the migrating cells stop is different for different cancer types. Once the tumor cells are no longer moving, they can begin the process of forming a new tumor by leaving the blood vessel and beginning to reproduce in the new location. This does not always occur, and cells that have made it this far may still die or fail to divide. If the new environment is suitable, the newly arrived cell will begin to grow and a new tumor will develop.
And that is the most important phenomenon about cancer. The best way to be cured is to avoid metastatic disease. That means picking up cancer early, before it has gone through the basement membrane, and certainly before it has gone through the bloodstream where it may spread. The surgeon can remove the primary tumor, but if it has spread already, there's no choice but to get chemotherapy. And the chemotherapy we use is to kill those cells that have escaped, so they will not form new nests that can become new sites of disease. So how common is cancer? Well, quite common, as you saw yourself. Heart disease, 24% of patients will die of heart disease. About 23% of patients will die of cancer, and then you have some other causes, and stroke comes number 3. As you can see, the numbers are very similar for men and women. In fact, women, to a certain degree, are protected from cancer, obviously, except for breast cancer. The female hormone, estrogen, is a very protective hormone. Most of us who are men complain that we have to shave. Women complain about other things they have to do on a monthly basis, but I think it's better to be a woman than a man, at least biologically. And to give you an example, we have an experiment in the lab where if you take animals and you bleed them down to half their blood volume, all animals will die, because bringing your blood volume down to half is not compatible with survival. If you give these animals one dose of a synthetic female hormone, half of them will be alive at 6 hours, the other half will be alive forever after. It's amazing that you can bleed an animal down to half their blood volume, and one dose of a synthetic female hormone can at least make a quarter of them survive forever after. So the army wants that struggle, because if you have soldiers in the war front who have succumbed to significant bleeding from an attack, they want to be saved until the helicopter can come and medevac them. So we have a contract from the Department of Defense to be able to study this female hormone in men and women, not animals. We've done that. Men and women, to see whether one dose of this female estrogenic molecule can make soldiers survive at least for 6 hours before they can be rescued and then taken to the next medevac. So for a woman, I think it's good to be a woman in this world. It's a tough life, I know. But I think I would think that if I were to come back on Earth, I would probably choose to come back as a woman. I hope I don't have to, but... So what are the most common causes, forms of cancer? As you can see, for men, it is prostate cancer. Right? For women, it is breast cancer. The second most common cause of cancer is lung cancer. Fortunately for the Jamaat, it is not a very common cancer because we do not smoke. On the other hand, our youth do not see this that way. I can tell you, coming from North America, that the Jamaati youth, and I don't speak for the Jamaati youth in general, but the youth in America are picking up smoking, vaping, all these sophisticated ways of getting carcinogens into your lung. So I think this rate of lung cancer in the Jamaat may go up unless we educate our young children. Because I think this phenomenon of vaping and using very sophisticated, nice-smelling paraphernalia that gives you smoke into your lung is certainly not without danger. The third most common cancer, both for men and women, is colon cancer. So prostate for men, breast for women, lung for both, although it's not very common for us today, and colon for all men and women. So this is the most common cause of cancer. If you look at the most common death from cancer, it's lung cancer. It's because we cannot pick it up early, number one. We do not have good treatment for that, number two. On the other hand, for prostate cancer and breast cancer, we can pick prostate cancer up early. Breast cancer can be picked up early as well, so we have early detection. Very easy to do, we'll talk about it. And then colon cancer the same way. So the two cancers, which are very common, that we can survive and even be freed of, are breast, prostate, and colon. In each case, there's early detection available. And I know that there'll be breakout sessions to talk about that. I know that the health board is beginning some education about early detection of cancer and cancer screening. So are we making progress? I think we are. If you look at this is for men. Look at the lung cancer. 1930, very low lung cancer. By 1990, a very peak of lung cancer, and now it's dying down in the early 20s. So clearly, this is because of smoking. With significant smoking, 1990s, everybody was smoking. All of a sudden, then restaurants don't allow you to smoke, Delta Airlines does not allow you to smoke, etc., etc., and the lung cancer incidence goes down because cigarettes are more expensive. If you were to stop cigarette sales, 90% of lung cancer will be eradicated. So it's very simple. Look at breast and prostate cancer going down as well because of early detection, colorectal cancer going down. The only cancer not going down is pancreatic cancer, way down there at the bottom. We do not have early detection of pancreatic cancer, and as a result of this, we have a consistent increase. We don't have very good treatment either. So this way, more people have pancreatic cancer, more people die of pancreatic cancer. For women, it's the same. You can see that in the mid-90s, women were smoking as much as men. And you had lung cancer go up. It's slowly coming down because women have realized that what succumbed for men will happen to them as well. Look at breast cancer going down primarily because of early detection by mammography, colon cancer going down as well, but pancreatic cancer staying up. On the left, you see uterine cancer going down. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. Yeah? So, for every cancer for which there is early detection, the incidence is going down. For every cancer for which there's a carcinogen, if you avoid that, breast cancer will go down. them. So it is in our ability to be able to avoid cancer. So yes, it can happen to anyone and everyone, but we have a choice. If we make the choice, we probably are on the right side. And I tell you about it that even when we make choices, sometimes things happen, bad things happen. And I'll tell you a little bit about that as well. So, what can we do about cancer? Can we prevent? How? Early detect? How? Optimal treatment? What? Can we prevent cancer? Does anybody know any cancer you can prevent 100%? Any cancer that we can prevent? I developed a vaccine for which I have a patent for the prevention of melanoma. Yeah, skin cancer, something that's not very common for us Asians, very common for the white. So we have a vaccine for melanoma, so we can do that. Not approved as yet, but available. But there is an available technique to prevent a certain cancer. Everybody should know that. Every woman should know that. Every daughter should know that. HPV, absolutely, yes. The human papillomavirus. There are some cancers caused by a virus. Cervical cancer is caused by a virus by 99% of the case. The human papillomavirus. And there are many forms of the human papillomavirus, and the virus form 1 and 16 are the most common cause of cervical cancer. So it should be very easy that we should vaccinate our young girls and our young boys from HPV. Now, we don't do that because we say, well, if you do that, they might become promiscuous, etc., etc. That's all, fairy tale. They will do whatever they will do depending upon your education, your awareness, and how you brought them up. But giving HPV vaccination is a sine qua non way to eradicate cervical cancer, number one. Number two, head and neck cancer. Half of head and neck cancers are HPV driven. So if you were to be vaccinated against HPV, you would probably eradicate half of head and neck cancers. And if you were in Africa, the most common cause of death in Africa first discovered in Uganda, in Makerere University, was Burkitt's lymphoma. Burkitt was a physician, a European physician, who saw these big tumors in African children in their faces, was able to culture them and realized that the cause of Burkitt's lymphoma was a virus, Epstein-Barr virus. Today, you can vaccinate against EBV, you will not get Burkitt's lymphoma. So, about 15% of cancers are caused by pathogens, by infectious organisms, most likely viruses. You can vaccinate yourself, and those three cancers, cervical cancer, head and neck cancer, and Burkitt's lymphoma, can be eradicated. So can you prevent? Answer is yes. Can you prevent in other ways? As I told you, high insulin levels will promote cancer growth. So it is not a wife's tale to say low fat, high fiber, and exercise. I'm not sure how many of us exercise. We've got a great park here. I came from morning to Matkala today. I didn't have a car, so I walked over, and it took me about 15 minutes, and I said, well, going back, I should run. So with my coat and my shoes, I ran back home. It saved me coming back for a run. People say, why do you run? It is very self-serving. One, I can't tell you to run if I don't run, number one. Number two, I want to live long, and because of that, you have to be able to have exercise. 20 minutes a day, 3 times a week, requirement. Besides Bandi and Dua and other things, it's not going to have differences about this, but certainly you can put it into your repertoire. Low fat, high fiber, and exercise. But you have to start when the child is young. You cannot start at 30, certainly not at 50, too late. If we do animal model studies, the best way to prevent cancer, a variety of cancers, by low-fat, high-fiber exercise at the time of puberty. We take mice, challenge them with tumor cells. Those mice who get low-fat, high-fiber, you run them on the treadmill all the time, get less cancer. It's a proven fact. We just haven't applied it. You apply it to mice, you do not apply it to men or women. We should. Early detection, we'll talk about it, and optimal treatment, we'll talk about it. So what happens? How we diagnose cancer? Symptoms, physical examination, there's some blood tests. But half of cancers do not have specific symptoms until it's too late. So early detection is the only way to prevent or detect early those type of cancers and then to improve your cure rate. And then we'll talk about examination, we'll talk about some blood tests, and we'll talk about screening tests. So this is a chest X-ray, and you get it done when you have a cough, you have pneumonia. In the middle you see your heart, on the left and right you see your lung. This is a normal chest X-ray. Well, if you have something in your chest and there's a lesion, you'll get a CT scan, a CAT scan, a computer tomography scan. What is a CAT scan? It's like a tunnel. That big box is where X-rays come out. You sit on that little bed and will scoot through into that hole where you get X-rays going through your body. And what comes out is like this, where the X-ray is going through every part of your body, and every body is sliced in 3mm slices. So you will see your entire body in 3mm slices. You can see every organ in your body. So it looks like this. On the left you see one slice. On the right you see every slice 3mm at a time. So when you're told, I'm getting a CAT scan, it's an X-ray of your body right through. And you can see on the left-hand side, you can see the gallbladder, the liver, the kidneys. The radiologists spend their time looking at this. And people say, well, why can't I just have a CT scan? It'll pick up cancer. If you have a CT scan today, if you go to free of charge, 8 times out of 10, you'll pick up non-specific lesions which are not malignant. So 8 out of 10, you'll pick up non-specific stuff. 1 time out of 10, you'll pick up a disease which is not cancer. And only 0.1 times will you pick up cancer. So getting a routine CAT scan, even if you can afford it, is not very beneficial because it cannot pick up cancer. It can only pick up disease once it has manifested itself. But this is what a CAT scan looks like. So remember, I showed you a normal lung. This is a lung of a patient with lung cancer on the right-hand side, and there's a CAT scan. It picks up exactly where the lesion is, how big it is, how involved it is. And we always need a CAT scan to identify the physiology and the anatomy of the lesion in the lung. This is PET scan. Who knows what a PET scan is? Everybody in America wants a PET scan. What is a PET scan? It's a positive emission tomography. A PET scan is when we give you radioactive glucose. Radioactive glucose will be taken up by tumor cells. Tumor cells will pick up the radioactive glucose and they will shine with a high radioactivity, i.e. red. So you see here on the left-hand side, on your left I think, you see the CAT scan. This is a man. You see a tumor, a mass on the right, a big lump on the chest. On the right you see the PET scan, and that lump is radioactively tagged because that lump took up radioactive glucose. That is a sign of malignancy. So that's a PET scan. A PET scan is one to differentiate a lesion on a CAT scan whether this is infection versus cancer. So this is one good way, before you do a biopsy, to do a PET scan. They can separate a benign lesion from a malignant lesion. Look at this PET scan. On the left you see a patient with many hot spots before treatment and then after treatment. 2 weeks of a treatment that blocks a certain gene will move one person with a lot of lesions on the left all the way to nearly no lesion. The only red part you see on that person on the left is the heart, which is where you have just blood. Yeah? So remarkable recovery. Just 2 weeks worth of treatment. This treatment for melanoma. Melanoma from getting a pill a day, twice a day, will eradicate melanoma completely. This is the pill that Jimmy Carter got for his melanoma. Yeah? That is not his picture. He didn't give it to me, but this is clearly something like that. On the right-hand side, you see somebody with disease in the bones. You see the ribs, all of them have diseases. This is a patient also with melanoma. 2 weeks later, nearly everything is dissolved completely. So we're able to treat cancer today with specific therapy that targets a gene. As long as you know what gene is causing the disease, you can give an antidote against the gene. So there are at least about 20 or 50 genes available today that cause cancer, and we have drugs for nearly half of them. So we are making progress, and it's a typical example. Let me ask you a question. You see, everybody's head is red. And cancer, I said, was red. So what's happening to the people's head? Do they have cancer in the head? Why is the head red? It's radioactive. It's picking up radioactive glucose. Why is that? If you get that right, I will give you a free meal. Others will give yes?
The brain uses glucose as from...
Yeah, give a free meal. Absolutely. Yes. the brain is probably the most active part of your body. So when we get a PET scan, we tell the person, we put them in the dark room, say, don't think, meditate, and then we get a PET scan. This guy was thinking a lot. He had a hot brain. So we cannot use PET scan for brain tumors because everybody's thinking all the time. The brain is taking up radioactive glucose, and as a result, the brain is always positive. The difficulty is thinking causes no weight reduction. If thinking causes weight reduction, we all would be thin. Ismaili would be thin all the time because we're stressed out, thinking all the time. But unfortunately, we don't take too much glucose. But it's always very actively hot attack on a PET scan. And then you have the MRI. The MRI is not radioactive. It is just a magnetic resonance of your own fluid in your body. We take a big magnet, we magnetize the whole body, and then we can pick up signals from your body. So the best way, the best organ to test with an MRI is the brain. And you can see the brain on the left-hand side, sliced this way, horizontally, sliced vertically, and at the bottom you see an MRI with a lesion in the brain. Yeah? So that's an MRI. That's why we cannot, I'll come to it in a minute. That's why we cannot have any metals in the body when you have an MRI, because you put in a big magnet, it'll suck you out, because if you have a metal in your body. Yes?
Let's talk about the radioactive consult. Is there any side effects or any damages while you do that?
It is a very low amount of radioactivity, so there are no side effects. Certainly you cannot be pregnant today when you have a PET scan, but other than that, there are no other side effects. Important though, if you're a diabetic, your blood sugar has to be low. Because if blood sugar is very high, the tumor will take up your blood sugar and not the radioactive blood sugar I gave you. So those are the only things you have to worry about. Yeah. So, ultimately, yes. Pardon? Well, a stent, there are stents today that are not magnetic. But if you had your stent placed 10 years ago, probably you could not have an MRI, yes. Yeah. But they can replace it next time we do another procedure. The only way to really detect cancer and diagnose cancer is with a biopsy. A CAT scan, a PET scan, everything gives you a notion that you might have disease, but you have to put a needle, look at the tumor tissue on a microscope. So you can see here cells all around it. In the middle is this big cell that looks very angry, like a cyclops. That's what pathologists do, right? But the only way to diagnose cancer is with a biopsy. All the other tests are diagnostically useful, but not confirmatory. Yeah. So let's talk about some cancers. How am I doing with time? 20 minutes, okay. So this is lung. We'll talk about lung, not very much because we don't see lung cancer. But this is a normal lung of a young child, no smoking, no pathogens, no exogenous bad air. This is a smoker's lung. This is exactly what it looks like when you are a coal miner's smoker's lung. It sees all kinds of carbon, coal mine, dust, etc. No question, this is a very big harbinger of cancer. But this is the difference between a coal miner's lung and a normal lung, right? And this is a cancer in the lung. You can see it on the X-ray, you can see it when we section the lung, and there's pathology on the left. Question, do non-smokers get cancer? Do non-smokers get lung cancer? Yes. How? Why? Second-hand? That's what I think. The best answer is second-hand. Number two is I was working as a bartender. Number three is my parents smoked, etc., etc. If there's this little quiz game in America, you would get wrong on all three. So what is the real answer? So I'll tell you a story. About 18, go ahead. Environment? Not quite, possible. So 8 years ago, I was coming to visit my parents, and before I came, I got a call from the health board. The health board said, there's a consultation. There's a young woman who's got cancer, wants to consult with you. I said, why? Send me, we had internet at that time, send me an email, send me the records. When I come back from Toronto, I will provide a consultation. The health board person says, no, the woman is in Toronto. I said, oh, Toronto, I'm going there today. So I arrived here, I remember very clearly, 8 o'clock in the evening. This young woman was 31, 2 children came to me to consult with me. She had lung cancer. She had lung cancer, non-smoker, does not work in a bar, no passive smoking, nothing. And she was going to Princess Margaret Hospital, was going to get chemotherapy. Well, the answer is, there are two genes that are responsible for lung cancer in non-smokers. One of the genes is the EGFR gene, and the other one is EML4 ALK gene. 10% of cancers in non-smokers, well, 10% of all cancers are in non-smokers, and of those 10%, 2% are caused by those two genes. So our consultation with the young woman was, you go back to Mrs. Margaret, tell them to test the gene for you. She came back and said, they don't do the testing at Mrs. Margaret. This was 8 years ago. So with the help of the health board, we sent her to Buffalo, across the river. She got tested for EGFR gene. And rather than taking chemotherapy or surgery, she was on a pill twice a day. This woman is still alive today, and I talked with her about 2 weeks ago. Alive and well 8 years later because of a pill a day. Now, in the meantime, she's got other things going on. But this is what knowledge is about. And did the physician at Mrs. Margaret offer the gene therapy? No. Did we? We did. Because we, at least in the United States at that time, had this information which was not available everywhere else. But the question is, how would a lay person know? And what I say is, you've got to challenge your physician every day. You have a problem? You're paying my bill. You're paying my mortgage. It is your right to challenge me to say, by the way, is there anything else experimentally? And we'll talk about this afternoon when she talks about experimental therapy. Every patient should ask about experimental treatment to be available. And if the physician does not know, can you find out? In Canada, it takes about 3 months to see an oncologist. Well, tell them to find out. You're coming in 3 months. Have them find out. When I get consultations from Canadians, the biggest difficulty I have is talking to physicians. A Canadian physician will not talk with anybody who is not a patient or their colleague. In America, you can talk with anybody. Yeah? Because we ourselves have not developed the attitude to say, this is my body, I pay my bill, you get paid because I'm here. It is my right. And with that confidence, but you have to have some knowledge as well. You ask proper questions, you will realize that the physician will pay attention, and you will be more empowered, as will he. Yeah? So this young woman came to us, thanks to the health board. We were to do the gene testing in Buffalo. She got the treatment in Buffalo for 2 years, and then the treatment was approved in Canada, and since then she was receiving it in Toronto. Yeah? So yes, 2% of lung cancers occur because of these two genes. In the meantime, there will be many other genes we can test for. Breast cancer. So we have more women here, so we'll talk about breast cancer. You know, what did you get for Valentine's Day last year? Raise anybody who's a woman who has a loving husband who got something for Valentine's Day. What did you get? Any flowers. And then you have to wash the dishes the next day? That didn't change? Yeah. Who got a mammogram as a gift certificate for Valentine's Day? If men love their women, for real, I would give a mammogram to my wife. Yeah? When I came to Vancouver many years ago to talk in Jamatkala, only 20% of women were getting mammograms done. Even the Mukyani and the Mukyani had not had the mammograms done. So I told Muksai, if you really love your woman, as you say you do, next time, no flowers, the same amount of money could give you a mammogram. So we'll talk about this. So this is breast cancer. Breast tissue can result in cancer. But I want you to look at this diagram. You have the nipple. 5% of cancers in the breast can be in the nipple. Yeah? And then you have those ducts that look like flowers. 80% of breast cancer occurs in those ducts, lobules. I'm sorry. 5% in the nipple. And then you have those little ducts, which are the pipes. 80% of cancers occur in those pipes, which are the ducts. And then you have those lobules where breast milk is made. About 10% of breast cancer occur in the lobules. So lobular cancer is only 10%. Ductal cancer is 80%, and Paget's disease, which is cancer in the nipple, is about 5%. Right? So the most amount of cancer in the breast is happening in the ducts. And this is breast ducts from the milk gland where the milk is pressed into the nipple. But the stuff you see in green are the lymph nodes. This is where cancer spreads first, if it occurs. So you can imagine, if you pick up cancer very early, before it gets going to those lymph nodes, the chance of cure with surgery alone is 100%. Once it spreads to the lymph node, then you have metastasis like you saw in the video. If a tumor gets to the lymph node, the chance of it spreading elsewhere is 50%. So surgery alone will not cure you. So the only way to pick up breast cancer early is self-examination, which is what we taught in Tajikistan. Number 2, mammography. Number 3, ultrasound if necessary. Yeah. And it's primarily because of those lymph nodes. Those are protective organs that protect your breast from infection. But they're also the gatekeeper for cancer cells. They will stop the cancer cells from spreading. But if the gate already has cancer cells, there's a 50-50 chance that those cells have escaped outside. So these are mammograms. As you can see on the right, you see a young woman with dense breasts. Young woman breastfeeding, a lot of glandular tissue, difficult for a mammogram to penetrate. So if you're a young woman, 35 years old, who's had children, who's had breastfeeding as part of her child rearing, it will be very difficult to pick up a tumor on a mammogram. On the left completely you see a woman who's 80 years old. There's no breast tissue left, no ducts left, just fat. You can see the mammogram is very, very clear. So if you're a young woman who has breast pathology or on examination by yourself and you find a lesion, the mammogram is not the best way to pick up your lesion. Either you do a 3D mammogram or the ultrasound or an MRI, and primarily because of breast dense tissue that cannot allow the X-ray to go through. Yeah. So here you are, difficult case. Young woman, very dense breast, difficult to pick up a tumor. On the other hand, an older woman, the breast is much clearer, very easy to pick up a lesion on mammography, and you can see a big lesion on the top of the breast. As a result, if you have abnormality where we cannot pick it up by mammography, we'll do the ultrasound. Or we can do an MRI, which I didn't show you here. Yeah. So symptoms. 80% of women with breast cancer will have no symptoms. 20% will pick the lesion up by themselves. It is my hope that every woman will examine herself once a month, a week after their periods. It is a requirement. In fact, 10% of breast cancers are not picked up by CT scan or a mammogram or an ultrasound. They're picked up by the woman themselves. Well, I we go take a shower, I'm sure we do, once a month. It's got to be primary requirement. We spend 6 days in Korok, Tajikistan, informing our Jamaat to do that. We've been doing it for the last 3 years. When we went this time, we saw that women were saying, yes, I do that. It should be categorical in Toronto, Canada, that women do that. Do they do that? Answer is no. Only 1 out of 3 consciously will examine themselves in the shower once a month. Not excused. When you talk about mind over matter, that's the best place to put one's mind. Yeah. So, treatment depends upon the size of the tumor, whether the lymph nodes are involved, and there's some receptors that the tumors have, so that makes a difference. So this is what's going to catch your number. Okay? So if you look at, if you have a lesion in the breast, just a small lesion less than 2 centimeters, the chance of cure 5 years is 100%. A lesion becomes bigger, 3 centimeters, chance of cure goes down to 60%. Positive lymph node, chance of cure goes down to about 50% or so. So the best way is to pick it up small and early, nearly an 89% chance of being cured. Bigger lesions, smaller chance of cure, and then positive lymph nodes, chance of cure goes down about 60%. So if you're a woman or a man for that matter, the best chance of being cured is picking up very, very early by self-examination and by mammography. And this is categorical data why we do this, which is why when you have breast cancer surgery, we remove your lump, we also remove your lymph nodes. Mainly because to be sure that the lymph nodes are taken out. If your lymph nodes are positive, there's a 50-50 chance that cells have escaped, we'll give you chemotherapy. If you have a lumpectomy where you only remove the lump, we'll give you radiation therapy. Yeah. So there is a logic to all what we do. It's expensive. Angelina Jolie, we went to Tajikistan. We asked the question, what is the best way to prevent breast cancer? And one man rose, a physician says, mastectomy, double mastectomy. The answer is right. The only way to cure or prevent breast cancer is double mastectomy. Yeah, not a good procedure to do. But if you have a gene for breast cancer, 6% of Ashkenazi Jews have a gene that predisposes them to 90% of getting breast cancer. It is highly likely that we in the Jamaat, East Asian or South Asian ancestry, have that gene. We're doing studies on that. If you have that gene, there are 3 things you can do. Double mastectomy, number 1. Too aggressive. Number 2, frequent mammography. Number 3, there's a pill you can take that will decrease your risk of breast cancer if you have that gene by a third. So, the ways to prevent breast cancer, detect them early, but knowledge is important. Most of us do not have the gene, but you have a family history. Your mother had breast cancer, you have breast cancer. There's a very likelihood that you will have that gene. And we have treatment for that, but we also preventive measures for that. And my last talk will be about colon cancer. So the colon is, the large intestine is 6 feet, small intestine is 21 feet, so you've got 28 feet of small bowel and large bowel. And this is very insightful. Look at that lesion on the left, stage 0. Very tiny lesion that has not gone to the skin of the colon, right? Not your skin, but the skin of the colon. If you pick it up by colonoscopy, the chance of cure is 100%. If it becomes bigger, you see it's gone through the fat tissue, going to the muscle level, but not through the muscle. It's called stage 1, still 100% chance of being cured. If it goes and touches the muscle, it's stage 2, 80% chance of cure. If it goes to the entire lining of the colon, the cure rate goes down to 60%. And if it is spread outside metastatic disease, 15%. So you go from 100% cure rate to 15% cure rate, only because you picked it up early. And the only way to pick it up early is colonoscopy. If you're the age of 50, you need a colonoscopy. Now, I won't let you raise your hands because they'll tell me how old you are. But I've had at least, I can tell you how old I am. I've had 2 colonoscopies. And a piece of cake. Yeah, you get the shot, you forget about it. The only trouble about a colonoscopy is you give away all your secrets because they put you down. So you better make sure that whoever you have with you has to be a confidant, because very soon you'll give out all your secrets. But the reason we do colonoscopies is because of that. If you pick up a stage 0 or 1 or 2, the chance of cure is 80%. You let it be stage 3, positive lymph nodes, half the chance of being cured. Yeah, makes logic. So, can you get vaccinated? We talked about this. So, if you cannot prevent cancer, at least what you try to detect it early. And if it is not possible, there is always the hope that more people can be cured of cancer than dying of cancer. We've got 5 more slides. Let's talk about this. Cancer can be prevented? The answer is yes. It's a choice. Yeah? Early detection, self-examination. You act, you do not procrastinate. Yeah? And how do we cope with bad news? How do you cope? So you have this Kubler-Ross diagram that says, first of all, and Nashi will talk to us about it when she's in a breakout session, you have denial. Can't be true. The mammogram is wrong. Let's repeat it. The doctor's wrong. Yeah? Then you are angry. You say, why did it happen to me? Yeah, why me? Why not somebody else? That person is such a bad person. That's a good person. I go to Jamaat every day. It shouldn't happen to me. Somebody else. And then you fall into depression, which is where you have all this mental health support. And then you start bargaining. If I am a good person, I go to Jamaat every day, etc., etc. Can you make it better for me? Can you make me cured? I've got a child, she's got a grandchild, so you bargain. And then finally you say acceptance. Some people have this cycle, others go straight forward and say, by the way, no big deal, we'll deal with this. How you deal with this is partly inborn, partly your own character, partly support. So, there's some predisposing factors, right? You identify your risks. Some people are very gung-ho, very positive. Some people are already a little bit depressive in nature. You can't change it, that's how you were born. And then you have precipitating factor. Cancer is a major precipitating factor. And then you have protective factors like the Jamaat, support groups, wellness centers, etc. So we should all work on this to be able to help our Jamaat when we have cancer. Can the mind influence biology? The answer is no. The mind cannot influence the biology of a tumor. That's not possible. Can the mind influence the human immune response to cancer? The answer is yes. You can change the immune response that you have in face of cancer. That's possible. We know this all the time. Yeah. Typical example. A young woman has a period, has a little HPV ward on the lip. Fever blister, we call it, right? Happens all the time when you have your puberty. How come? When you're stressed out, you have more fever blisters. Typical. Your immune system is down, the virus goes back, gives you a little lesion. There are many evidences that the human immune system will respond to mind, and we can do that. And then, can the mind influence cancer outcome? The answer is yes. We'll talk about it. So here's the brain, and President Saleh talked about this. The green part of the brain is the frontal cortex. This is where positive vibes occur. When you're positive, your frontal cortex is always red hot. And deep down, in the middle where the green is, and I can't show it, is the amygdala. The amygdala is a part of the brain that is the depressive center. So all of us want a depressive center to be very low and the frontal cortex to be very high. So see what happens. This is the brain. I think President Saleh talked about this. In the resting MRI, you have at the top your blood flow and your part of your brain. Green is not active, blue is slightly active, yellow is more active, and red is very active. When you're walking on the left, the top part of your brain is active, the left part of your brain, which is where the motor circle is active. When you're seeing things, the back part of your brain is active because that's where we have the vision center. When you're hearing, the side of your brain is active because that's where you have the hearing center. When you're thinking, which is what you should be doing now, the frontal part of your brain is very active. And when you remember, depending upon what you remember, you have different parts of your brain active. So we can do a brain scan and to be able to think what you're thinking. No depression on the left, depression on the right. The whole brain is sort of sucked in. Very quiet, doing nothing. This is a depressive brain. We can pick this up on MRIs and on PET scan. Meditating brain on the right, Bashir meditates every day. Her brain looks like that. You can see on the right. Active frontal lobe, active posterior lobe, very active on the side. That brain has high immunity. And there is proven that meditation, doesn't have to be in Jamaat Khana, anywhere, will increase your immune response to anything, even to cancer. So when we talk about the mind does matter. So, last slide, 6 ways to, in a way, cope. This was an article written by a young Muslim girl in the New York Times, maybe 5 years or 3 years ago. Find your community. We have one. This is it. Yeah? We have an incredible community of the Imam of the time put us together for this particular cause. Eliminate clutter, not just in your house, but in your mind. Everywhere where you've got extra baggage, dump it. Yeah? Life is short. Prioritize your relationships. If you've done harm to somebody, say you're sorry. Life goes on. Accept what you may have done wrong and go with it and make new friends. Be kind to yourself. Yeah? Pamper yourself. It doesn't mean you go to Nordstrom to buy stuff, but be good to yourself. Take a vacation. Do something for yourself, right? And then do something for someone else. Service to the others provide a humanity of relief above and beyond anything else. And we know all that. We have all these people serving us for our event today, and I think that is part of giving. That is part of who we are. That is part of our ethic and culture. And my hope is that, at least in having told you what I've told you, you'll know a little bit about the tests we do. You'll know a little bit about the importance of early detection. You'll know exactly what to ask for next Valentine's. And most importantly, you'll be good to yourself. So I thank you. Noreen is a very strict timekeeper, so she, in a way, took me out of I want 2 more minutes if I can. So in Korok, these are Ismailis, obviously, we have the Korok Diagnostic Center, and I was seeing that patient, and there were 2 fermans of Hazuma that I want you to read for yourself. On the left-hand side, it says, I think it would be foolish to believe that there are no problems. Life is made of problems. They occur every day to just about everyone around the world, and I think it is important we should simply accept that. That is life. We must live it fully and courageously. This was right there in the waiting room. And on the right, it says, I'm always with you. And I want to add with this slide. This is Hazimam at the same place we went to visit just recently. This was in 2008. Hazimam says, this is extended to Afghan Jamaat. It also applies to us. For the love of the Imam is what we are all about. Hazimam says, I would like on this occasion also to tell my Jamaat here in Tajikistan, but also across the river, that the love of the Imam knows no physical boundaries. No mountain, no river, no desert can stop the love of the Imam for his Jamaat worldwide. It is our responsibility. The Imam gives you so much love, you have to pay back by serving others and being good to yourself. So I thank you.
I was told that once you hit 70, they don't recommend a colonoscopy, especially if you've got sleep apnea and you're
You know, I was making a joke the other time. It says, if you're 65 or 70, you don't need to come to this lecture anymore because whatever I say will not apply to you. Partly because in colon cancer, it takes about 8 to 10 years for a lesion to be, for a cell to have a genetic mutation to become a cancer. So if you had a colonoscopy at the age of 70, thereafter, it is really not necessary. Because even if you had a lesion that is mutated, will become cancer by the age of 80, there, a routine physical examination with blood and stool is important. If you do a stool test for blood, that is sufficient. I would not do a colonoscopy. Yeah. Most of these early detection tests are below the age of 60. Yeah.
Is there a difference between EGFR and stem cell?
Stem cell?
Yeah.
The question is there a difference between EGFR and stem cell? EGFR is an epidermal growth factor receptor. It is a receptor, and the way to look at this is all cells, normal cells as well as healthy cells, have receptors. Receptors are like mouths through which a cell will feed itself. So a tumor cell has many more mouths. Lung cancer that is not caused by smoking has what we call amplification, excess genes for EGFR. So the EGF mouth is highly expressed on the tumor cells. And we all make the food called EGF, epidermal growth factor. So if you make the same amount of food, but your tumor has many mouths, you can imagine that the tumor will grow faster. So the only way to block the tumor is blocking the EGFR receptor. And the pill we gave to the young woman was a pill that blocks the EGFR receptor. So that's the answer to the first one. Stem cells are those cells that are very young in origin that can become anything. They can become the brain, they can become the eye, they can become the bone marrow. So we talk about stem cell transplantation. We take that very original bone marrow cell that has what we call pluripotent, that can do anything it wants to and can become any organ it wants to become. So stem cell is used for regeneration. If you have Parkinson's and your cells in the specific part of the brain have degenerated, you can put in stem cells. Those are young cells that can become the brain. We also have stem cells for the eye. People who've lost retinal vision can get stem cells. When we put them in the eye, they can become retinal cells. So the Imam is very particular about neurologic disorders or degenerative diseases. And in order to be able to use stem cells for that kind of therapy, the future is coming. We will be able to use stem cells. We can today take out a skin cell, deprogram them for them to become stem cells and become anything you want to. So take care of your skin. You might need that in the future.
Liposarcoma, would they call it the lung cancer?
You know, sarcoma is cancer of the tissue and lipo is fat. So this is cancer of the fat tissue. It can happen in breast, in the GI tract, in the lung, with a different pathology. It is lung cancer because it originated in the lung, with a different kind of tumor that requires a different kind of treatment. Not typical for lung cancer, not the typical smoker-induced lung cancer. Yeah.
For young people, when they get a physical, they get the blood test or they do a blood pressure test. So is it necessary to do cancer screening in the young people? And what should you ask your doctor?
Good question. With one drop of blood, today we can check for 1,000 genes. So I can tell you right away today with one drop of blood, are you predisposed to diabetes? Are you predisposed to heart disease? I may even be able to tell you, are you predisposed to cancer? But predisposition is not equal to having the disease. So the trouble is, doing genetic testing today is too much information. It's clutter. It'll tell you, I have a risk for being schizophrenic, I have a risk of being depressed. Turns out that the environment has significant, what we call epigenetic. Epigenetics is the ability of the environment to influence your genetic makeup. So while you might have the gene of what we think is a gene for schizophrenia, you may be the brightest guy in the world without any problems because the environment influenced you. So yes, while we can do genetic testing today, it is not of benefit because we do not know the outcome of the particular gene. Now EGFR gene, if you have that, you are going to get lung cancer. But that is a very, very small minority. So we'll be testing 1,000 people to just pick up 0.001. But I think in the next 8 to 10 years, for those people who are at risk for diabetes, family history, risk for heart disease, risk for cancer, we'll be able to pick up genes from the blood test to be able to tell your predisposition, and then you can say, okay, fine, I need to be more careful, don't smoke, etc., etc. At the moment, I would suggest routine blood testing. What we do are simple tests for diabetes and kidney, etc., functional. Those are very rudimentary tests. I think in the next 5 years, we'll look at it very differently. That's true. So today's pacemakers are allowed in the MRI because they are not metallic. They are made of other metals that are not magnetic. But the old pacemakers, we cannot do an MRI. But you can still get a CAT scan, you can get an ultrasound, you can get a PET scan. Yeah. Finish your question. You want to finish your question?
For the question I asked, so genetic testing in young people and blood testing, is there anything else like the PET scan or the CAT scan in young people especially?
The problem about the CAT scan and the PET scan is got so much false negative results. Number one, even more so false positive. So every little thing, if you have an infection, you have a pimple, it'll be hot. Now, it could be melanoma, but then you'd pick it up. So the trouble about having CAT scans, PET scans in the scans, even for young or old, not specifically without symptoms, the rate of false positives, many more positives than for reality, is so high it is not worth it. Because then you have biopsies, so many tests for nothing. In fact, the mammogram, there's controversy between the Canadians and the Americans. We said 35, we said 50, now we come up with the 50. You can do it earlier, but the trouble about having false positives is so high that it turns out to be not an advantage. It turns out you have many more disadvantages. So for now, I tell young people, diet is critical. Exercise, you should be hitting that treadmill every day. And in terms of lifestyle, less stress. But then you wouldn't be in Canada.
There will be opportunities to ask more questions to Dr. Saleh, so don't worry about that. There will be an opportunity. Dr. Saleh, thank you so much for a very great talk on winning the war against cancer. You've depicted that cancer is a global issue and that prevention and early detection are the most effective long-term strategies. An important point that I believe you will be talking about in the concurrent sessions is that half of all cancers can be cured, and when it's unable to be cured, it's no different than living with other conditions like diabetes. But in the end, how an individual manages and copes will determine what their quality of life will look like. Please join me again in thanking Dr. Saleh. So just before we break for our concurrent sessions, I'd like to make a few housekeeping announcements. Each of you has received a package upon registration. In this package, you'll find an agenda which will outline the location and time for the session. So the times have shifted, and we will make announcements about that. In addition, there's an evaluation form which we encourage you to fill out. This is an opportunity for us to learn about what you value from today's session and also what we can improve on. Lunch will be served here in the social hall at 12:50 p.m. Feel free to use this time to network with the other participants and also the speakers. We have several interactive exhibits which will be set up just outside of the social hall. These include live yoga, diet and nutritional supports, designing a physical activity plan by the Aga Khan Youth and Sports Board, and they're actually going to be doing a draw for 2 Fitbits, so extra incentive to visit the booths. There will also be a naturopathic medicine resource booth. We also have two key organizations that have been supporting members of our community for several years, the Flemington Health Center and the Scarborough Hospital. Please visit their booths to learn more about the services that they offer. The Flemington Health Center will be conducting an exercise demo using resistant bands at 12:50 and a demo using exercise balls at 1:15. And the first 30 people to each demo will get either a free resistance band or an exercise ball. Dental screening and cardiovascular screening will also be offered in the classrooms, and we encourage you to view the exhibits and participate in these activities. Lastly, please note that the breakout sessions will take place in the classrooms and will begin in the next few minutes, so please make your way over there. There will also be volunteers to help you with wayfinding. Thank you all. Please enjoy your breakout session.